Hey folks, Bruce McDonald here, the Talamanca Review. 9:01 p.m. Tuesday the 15th of October, and wow, what a day. Let me think about what I want to say tonight. What did I title this again? Head for the Hills? Yeah. I want to talk, I guess you could say as positively as I can about everything that's going on in the world in a slightly or somewhat optimistic way. I mean, at a certain point, you just don't get pessimistic anymore. It can't really happen. You can have, I guess you could say, emotional responses to things, but deep-seated depression or any kind of lasting negative emotion just doesn't come about anymore. And this is the result of just having some breakthroughs in consciousness and coming to a deeper understanding of what's going on down here. As you know, in many ways like working through the politics and stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all just like pro sports to me. It's just a game. It's not really real. It is real and it isn't real. There are certain real things you can extract from it, but it itself is not really what I would call real. So that's the way I see things. Now, I want to sort of like try to circumscribe everything I've been trying to say on the Talamanca Review. So it's not a redo like last week or the week before that. It's what I'll call a unification podcast, where all of these little things I talk about here and there, I'll try to bring into a larger picture, okay? Okay. So number one, there's one of the things that comes through in the Talamanca Review is the nature of human consciousness and how it fits into the realities that we live in, because we live in multiple realities simultaneously. I guess the simplest two to explain without being too obtuse are an external reality, which we experience through our senses and decode or interpret through our brain. And then there's an internal reality that is more about connecting with spirit in various forms, okay? Now, when your internal state takes you over, that's very bad, because that's like succumbing to the illusion at another level. Okay, you want, to the best of your ability, you want to stay in the eye of the storm at all times. You don't want to get carried away with your emotions. This particular lesson took me decades to figure out, and I still, by habit and culture, I still trip over myself with this one every once in a while. Get lost in conceiving of a falsehood as a reality. And the falsehood here would be this material reality that we live in, which is like an illusion, or let's say, I don't like to call it an illusion, right? And I've chastised the yogis and the Buddhists for saying that, it's all Maya, it's all an illusion. No. And if you remember why I say that's not true, because the eternal substance or the eternal essence of the Creator is down here with us. Okay, so the eternal nature of the creative force is here. And therefore it's not an illusion. It's derivative. Okay, so it's like a puppet show that they used to do with paper cutouts and lights, where you just watch this shadow theater. And it's kind of like that, the reality that forms here, there's a primary reality, which is the creator. And that's the natural base we're given to work with. And we are the sentient hominid on the planet, the human beings. And then we get this natural base, and then from that natural base, we try to do a creation of our own, if you will. And we always get this wrong. Like 100% of the time, we get this wrong. To my knowledge, there has never been a human civilization that has lasted as long as the native civilizations have lasted. And the reason is, the moment you start building something, the moment you go into material manifestation, you create a kind of magnet and you draw other people in who want what you've created. They're drawn to it, like a fly to moth, like a moth to the light. It's what it is. They're drawn to it. You know, I don't think that everybody in Egypt was a slave. I think a lot of people went there to work. And I think a lot of them worked just for beer and bread, which were the main staples of the Egyptians, beer and bread. So I think a lot of people went there voluntarily, right? You look at the United States now, and how the mythos and the immodesty of projection in that mythos. Look at what we've done. Look at how great this is. Look at everything we've built. Look at how clean our cities are. Look how much money you can make here. Look how we treat each other. Look at what your rights are here. Look at our court process here. Well, that created a magnet. And that magnetic draw is in full force now. Right? Which explains, at least in some part, the migrant invasion. But that's only one part of it. The other part is very, very intentional. Okay? So what I've learned in my life is that you want to live modestly. You want to live as close to nature as possible. And you don't want to over-materialize. Okay? You do not want to over-materialize your life. Okay? Now, again, the big thing that stops people from taking this advice is, number one, the mating impulse, and number two, the deformed mating impulse, or the perverted mating impulse. But they're both rooted in sex, which is a huge thing in the cult undergrounds as well, right? Huge thing. It's one of the binding agents in that world. That's why we're getting all this sex stuff. It's been nonstop now for like almost a decade, right? You guys remember Nivixum? This super weird cult that was up in like New York State, close to the Canadian border, near a town called Cornwall. And it had big people in it. You know, it had the daughters of the Bronfman family, which are like a very well-to-do Canadian Jewish family, billionaires, who, by the way, they made their money with the Kennedys going back like a century with Jack Kennedy. I forget what the father's name was, which would be the grandfather of RFK Jr. Not his father, but his grandfather. But they made their money with him bootlegging during Prohibition. And the Nivixium cult was really weird, wasn't it? You know, you had to get branded. And again, there were Hollywood stars in it. And, I mean, there's that clip I played a week and a half, 2 weeks ago about the COVID czar for New York City bragging about going to sex parties during the lockdowns. And, you know, for me, the takeaway there is not actually obeying the edicts of the lockdowns, but again, the sex parties. You got Epstein, you got Ghislaine Maxwell, you've got P. Diddy, right? It's just nonstop with this sex stuff, okay? You really, to get anywhere in this world, you really have to get a hold of your sexuality. It's very, very important. And if you can't, you're gonna get You're going to get used and abused. You're going to get trapped. You're going to get entrapped. And I would suggest that it's happened to a significant number of people in the world already. Now, this is one dimension of what the Talamanca Review talks about. I mean, I've covered it in so many ways. The Catamite Parade is another podcast I did. Why are so many global leaders now absolute fucking freaks? Why is Emmanuel Macron getting fucked in the ass by a dude 15, 20 years older than him that he met when he was 16, who pretends she's a woman? You know, why is Rabbi Shmuley chastising Candace Owens for talking about this on her podcast? You know, start to connect the dots. Okay? Who's Justin Trudeau? You know? Why is he being connected to the most prolific serial killer in Canada now, who ran a pig farm and had an event license for big raves on his farm that used to draw, again, big people? And this wasn't just sex, it was sex and murder and cannibalism. Okay? Now I know a lot of you who listen to it maybe for entertainment reasons. Because there's an element to the Talamanca Review that is very entertaining. You're hearing information that you don't hear in everywhere, or you're hearing things that not a lot of people connect and put together. And it can be quite entertaining because we all have that Italian grandmother in us, right? The old lady that loves to gossip and just get that knife in people's backs when she's talking to other people. Everybody's got somebody like that in their family. In my family, it's my mother. Just horrible fucking woman, my mother. You know? And you don't often hear people speak that honestly about their parents, but it's the truth. And I'm just at an age where I'm no sentiment or societally imposed sentimental norm is going to corrupt me from telling what I perceive to be the truth. And my mother's one of the worst human beings I've ever known in my life. She's a horrible human being. Still kicking too. She's 85 or 86 now. Still full of venom. Still poisonous. And some people get that way, right? But there's this entertainment value to the Talamanca Review. And sometimes I say things, and I'm not really like petrified when I talk about these topics, right? I talk about them in a very casual way. You know, I don't over-dramatize them. There's some big podcasters now coming up who are just kind of rehashing stuff that we old guards in the alternative media have been talking about for, 10 years or longer. And they're just sort of rehashing these things, but they color it and dramatize it in such a way that captures a new audience, a new generation. Marketing is very generational, by the way. Most people who go into the marketing business are between 21 and 30. There's not really a whole lot of old people in advertising and marketing. The stakeholders, maybe, like the people who own the agencies, and their talent would be spotting talent, people who can communicate to their generation. So, that was the story of Don Draper in Mad Men, right? That AMC TV show, right? And Don Draper was just this magical salesman, and they pulled him into Madison Avenue, and he became one of the geniuses of advertising in that fictive 60s they created. But that was pretty real, too. That's probably very much how it went down. And what took people in, and then you got to ask yourself, why do people do things? Like my whole life I've had difficulty doing things that I consider to be shameful. Okay? Like I write exceptional books, but I have difficulty selling them. And because you got to be shameless to sell something. And I'm just like, okay, well, they're there. Those who find them will find them, and those who don't won't. And I really don't care. For me, the thing was doing them. And that's the job that the creator gave me, and somebody else has to go out and make them popular or spread them by word of mouth. It's not my job, okay? And that may seem a little hard-ass to, to some of you. Like, I mean, I don't think you could get away with this attitude in any other business, but I've never regarded writing as a business other than the formal corporate writing I do. I've just looked at it like summiting Everest. I want to write this book. I'm going to give myself a year to do it. And, a book takes a long time. It takes longer for fiction than it does for nonfiction. You sit down, you write the book. And it's like a massive undertaking, right? So I'm also, for the most part, despite the fact that I've dealt with and continue to deal with some of the darker and seedier things in the world on the Talamanca Review, I would like to think that I'm optimistic, okay? Because again, I see everything as spiritual. It's just a bunch of energies moving around, and it's all, like the Buddhists and the Hindus say, it all really is a kind of an illusion. Okay? Yes, the primal energy, the source energy of the creator is down here, but it comes down and goes out. It comes down and goes out in a continuous cycle, like a waterfall. And there's entropy down here. Nothing formed is permanent down here. Even mountains over time will erode, right? Even the surface of the world will change its form from time to time. This is not the original displacement of the continents and the oceans on this planet. My point being, everything down here changes. And you can't really get attached to anything. Everything changes, okay? So it's a fairly, I would say, optimistic podcast in that it reminds you of that and gives you tools to help you realize that yourself. And that's really important, okay? I cannot stress that enough. It's not enough just to listen to me or other podcasters and think, oh, I got this. It's like Bruce said, it's an illusion. It's just a bunch of energy. A life comes into the earth, a life leaves the earth, the body decays. The chemical constituents, the molecular constituents of that body become fertilizer for the earth. I get it. I get what Bruce is saying. Now, there's a difference between getting it conceptually and realizing it. Realizing something is completely different. It shakes your whole being when you realize something. Okay? I'm sad to report that most human beings lose the ability to evoke realizations in their life beyond a certain age. But if all of us remember back to our childhood, it was a natural part of our childhoods, like realizing things, okay? So that's a big thing right there as well. I also, in this sort of Head for the Hills episode of Talamanca Review, in which I'm trying to tie a bunch of things together, I also, all the modesty aside, and I don't think it's shameless to say I was right if something is proving that, it's right, okay? So there is something going on this planet where absolutely there seems to be this movement towards a global government. I don't think it's a political government. I don't think it's a political government at all. I think we're going to a global religious government. Not many people see that now. Okay? They're hiding that. And the reason they're hiding that is it would provoke people to rebel, and they don't want rebellion at this stage. They're not prepared for that level of rebellion right now. Okay? They will be. I mean, think of the whole thing as a giant chess game. Okay? That's really all it is. And then what happens at the end of a chess game? If the negative or the positive doesn't win, and neither the negative nor the positive can win down here, because the negative and positive have to cooperate to sustain this reality. So when the negative and positive compete against each other in human encampments, it's like a chess game. If the negative takes over and takes over the whole world, well, then the positive will come in and reset the board. And so what do you do at the end of a chess game? You say, Either you tip your king and you say, I surrender, meaning your opponent won the chess game, or you play until neither side can get a checkmate, and that's called an endgame in chess. Neither the white nor the black gets a checkmate. It's an endgame. And that happens a lot down here too. You hit an endgame, right? And then the board gets reset. So I have been telling you for some time that, look, we're going to go through some phases and cycles down here. And one of the things that we're going to go through is we're going to be gathered up into a global form of governance. And I mean, this has not been hard to predict. Okay? Everybody loves mercantilism and making money and everything, but when the moment I saw free trade in like 89, I mean, I could see the globalism beginning even when I was like, so in 80, I was born in 66, so like in 89 I was 23 years old. And I could already see that free trade was a form of the beginning of globalization. So the first step of globalization was to create trading blocks or regions. Okay? And some of them were and again, you had the negative and positive in that phase of the game. We perceived ourselves as the positive in the Western Alliance, freely trading. We were told we were freely trading with each other. Looking back on history and reading books like The Economic Hitman by Perkins, we realize, no, we weren't saints either. In our own way, we were doing things as dark as what we were told for propaganda reasons the Soviet Union and the Kremlin were doing through the Cold War. We had our own version of that darkness, okay? But there was a bipolar world after World War II, okay? And we were cast into two parties. We were cast into the free market, and we were cast into the communist world. And again, both of these are Jewish ideas. The money-based, capital-based central banking world comes from the Jews. The first significant central bank in the world was the Bank of England. And they wouldn't have been able to do that without the Protestant Reformation, because the Vatican controlled everything in Europe. Okay? So first you get the Protestant Reformation, and who did that? It was the Germans. That alone should have endeared the Germans to the Jews for eternity. It's very interesting that they fell out. Okay? There's a story there I don't quite understand, why the Germans and the Jews fell out, because the main enemy of the Jew in Europe was the Vatican, because the Vatican was extremely anti-Semitic. Okay? They had their reasons. I'm not saying it's all, like, take a breath, Bruce. You're getting excited. Stay detached, Bruce. It's all an illusion. Okay. So, the Vatican came across the Talmud in about the 6th century, in the 600s, and they could not fucking believe what they were reading. Okay? Christ is in hell, boiling in a vat of human excrement for all of eternity. Mary, the mother of God, was a whore, a common prostitute. Really, really vile stuff, right, that the rabbis put down. And the Jews, for the longest time, in Vatican-controlled Europe, Jews were not allowed to hold public office. So right away, there were no Jews in the administration of government. Okay? And they weren't allowed to hold title. So if you needed a title to be something, like just to be a notary public, to certify documents or something, to make something official, to be given a seal, so that you and your region or district had the authority of the Vatican, you were given the seal. No Jews. So no civic leaders were Jewish. No mayors or town, whatever they called them back then. I don't know what the different names were in Spain and Portugal and England and France and Belgium. I don't know what they were. So the Jews were definitely held back. There's and you know even in this thing, I don't really have. I still see the cosmic chess game. Okay, and it's almost like that's what we're down here to do. And when you don't want to do it anymore, you become a renunciate of some sort. Whether you join a Taoist monastery, or you become a Franciscan in the Catholic Church, or you become a yogic renunciant and go and live in a cave with the other renunciates in the Himalaya mountains, or you do the same thing in Tibet like Milarepa did, but you either play the game or you renounce it. Okay? Now I'm an exception because I do both. I'm a renunciate, and I've made formal steps towards the life of the renunciate, went into the wilderness, built an unconventional house that would never get a building permit anywhere, even though it should be able to get building permits in any country in the world. And the only reason they would not give a building permit to a building like this is the banks don't know how to equitize it and make money on it for resale. He's been quiet all day. I don't know. Maybe it's my voice. Maybe it's me talking to the computer that gets him riled up. I don't know. Buddy! What's going on there? He's looking right at me, too. He's eyeballing me. All right, I have a few things to play, so I'm going to play one of them now, and I'll be right back.
When the Mashiach will come, there'll be a new world order.
In order for Mashiach to come, we cannot have any other governments. It's going to be one kingdom, one malchut, one government. So you can look at it in the negative aspect of saying a new world order, a one government. Yeah, you're right. It is going to be a new world order. The new world of Mashiach with one order, the Torah, one government. Yeah, it's going to be a Sanhedrin. We're not going to have all the rest of the stuff. The time of the entire planet is done.
For Mashiach to take over the world, don't forget, at a certain point, King Mashiach should be ruling the whole world. They themselves, the nations of the whole world, will ask him and beg him to take over their, at least the government, their government, to teach them the right way, to teach them how to live. The whole world will take him upon themselves as the leader. And then actually going to be a new world order, but not like those radical ones think. There's going to be a new world order, but the new world of God order.
Before Mashiach comes and a new world order is instituted, we need to destroy what existed previously, and we need a destruction of society and the world as we know it.
Every new reality means a total loss of the reality that came before it, referring to the coming of Mashiach and the new world order that comes with it. Okay? In other words, for what is coming, what is has to be unrecognizable. Nothing can remain. None of the world systems can remain. Nothing will remain because it's rotten to the core.
The spiritual heirs of the Roman Empire is the Western world, United States of America, so the USA will last until Mashiach comes.
Someone has to completely destroy this world and its system before the new one comes in. You want your one world government? So does God, no problem.
God will abolish every government on earth and hand over control of the whole world to Mashiach.
Mashiach will be the king of the entire world. There will be a monarchy restored to the world. Mashiach will be king, and he will be accepted by both the nation of Israel and all the nations of the world alike.
You may be wondering why Hashem wants to destroy his world, why so much destruction, so much nuclear bombs and so forth. Before a new world is built, the old has to be destroyed.
Well, there you go. What have I been telling you? So let's stick with those guys for a sec, okay? So for this reality that they're talking about to come about, the first thing that has to happen, the Mashiach cannot come until the temple is built. Okay? And more we're starting to see that this is in fact what is going on in the world. Now, to my credit, and I'm not going to be so immodest that I'm not going to say, hey, I was one of the first people in the public talking about this. You can go on to BitChute and you will find 12 hours of interviews I did with one guy named Brian Rue. And the reason I thought Brian Rue was a suitable guy to interview for the book, because there weren't a lot of people out there who understood what the book was about. because you had to understand a number of things, and not many people understand this combination of things together, which open the safe. You know, to the left, to the right, to the left, open the safe. Most people just know one number. I'm going to talk about UFOs. I'm going to talk about the Jews. I'm going to talk about blood magic. You got to know what it all together means, okay? And Brian Roux had done some excellent work in ufology and in terms of deconstructing the Jewish power on the planet. But he was not prepared for me. I mean, the 12 hours of interviews we did just shook his world. And I made predictions, and those videos are still up. If you go to BitChute and you Google Bruce MacDonald, MacDonald, you'll go to Brian Roux's website, and you will see he's got a whole, what do you call it, I forget what you call it, but it's a whole, it's like a whole sub-page. The way you create a podcast or a stream, a group of podcasts or a group of shows on YouTube, you do the same thing on BitChute, right? And all 12 hours are there. And there I am in 2020, almost 5 years ago, talking about the Third Temple of Solomon. Nobody saw this coming. You know who saw it coming? You know what happened as a result of those interviews with Brian Roux? I ended up on the Third Temple mailing list. I get their emails twice a month ever since 2020 when I did those interviews with Brian Roux. Okay? So, of course, there's things the rabbis are getting wrong. Okay? Because remember what I said when I told you that when you're crazy, all you can see is yourself? Well, you can be a little bit sane and a little bit crazy at the same time, which most of us are, by the way. Okay? Most of us have a little bit of objectivity, and the objectivity is the divine or reality, getting ourselves out of the way so we can, information come in. The completely crazy person, they project themselves onto everything. Nothing comes in, nothing can change them, which is why they're crazy. They can't reconnect with the life stream. Okay? But most of us are a little bit crazy and a little bit sane. Okay? And the same holds true for the Jews. But in their hubris, you guys know what hubris is? It's a fantastic word, okay? Let me go look this up for you, okay? And I promise you, they're going to fuck up this word. Hubris definition. So, hubris, and they always give the American Heritage Dictionary of the English Language, 5th edition. I don't know. So, overbearing pride or presumption, arrogance. Excessive pride, presumption, or arrogance, originally towards the gods. So, they do give a little of the etymology there. Now, a lot of our etymology is going away in the dictionaries, and this is bad because, let me tell you something, language is reality. And Bruce, what are you talking about, man? I mean, computers are reality now, Bruce. AI is reality. We're way past language, Bruce. The fuck do you think AI is? It's a language. It's written in Java. It's written in C#. Coding languages are languages, okay? And when you study them, and I've been working with them for like 30 years now, man. Since I was about 27 years old, 28 years. No, about 28 years old. I got my first high-tech job when I was 30, turning 31. So I'm being 27 years or so, okay? But coding languages are absolutely fascinating. Okay, so imagine you could write a sentence, you could speak a sentence with a conditional verb. So, I'm going to the store now. Honey, where are you going? I am going to the store now. Okay, well, if that was a coding language, going would be conditional. So you could account for going, maybe going in 5 minutes, not going at all, changing your mind. You would hit this loop that was called if, else, if. So it's basically a sentence with a bunch of conditionals on what happens in the sentences. Coding is a language, is my point. Okay? It is a language. And all of these computational codes are pivoting off of super strong computers now. Okay? So language is reality. They're eradicating the etymology, which means classicism is going away, which I think is kind of bad. I really do. And there's out there people pretending to be classicists, right? But they're not. Like Douglas Murray, Israel's twink, always defending the Israelis, okay? There's another ironic mirror right there. If I were to attribute anything to the Jews, I would attribute material advancement to them and spiritual regression. Okay? But publicly, they want to be known as the spiritual leaders, which is what they're going for in the Third Temple and Noahide law. Okay? So overbearing pride or presumption and arrogance is what hubris is. Excessive pride, presumption or arrogance, originally toward the gods. Overbearing pride or presumption. Okay, I'm going to go to another dictionary because this is an unbelievably bad definition. I can't believe the kids got to grow up with this language. So Merriam-Webster says exaggerated pride or self-confidence. So here we go. Let me give you the etymology because Merriam-Webster still does that. So did you know? They don't call it etymology. They just put etymology is the origin of the word, the origin of the language, okay? So they just put a did you know now. And then they have hubris comes from ancient Greece. English picked up both the concept of hubris and the term for that particular brand of cockiness from the ancient Greeks, who considered hubris a dangerous character flaw capable of provoking the wrath of the gods. In classical Greek tragedy, hubris was often a fatal shortcoming that brought about the fall of the tragic hero. Typically, overconfidence led the hero to attempt to overstep the boundaries of human limitations and assume a godlike status. And the gods inevitably humbled the offender with a sharp reminder of their mortality. So this is a horrible definition. So hubris can't be understood without nemesis. Okay? So Nemesis is the Greek goddess of retributive justice. Okay? One that inflicts retribution or vengeance, a formidable and usually vicious rival or opponent. This is Merriam-Webster's. Completely wrong. It's derivative of the original meaning, but it's mutated to the point now where it doesn't really resemble the original meaning. So nemesis is hubris is an offense of the gods. Nemesis is the response of the gods. Okay? It's karma. Cause, effect. Cause, effect. But these geniuses at Merriam-Webster's are just fucking up our language to no end. And nobody's maintaining the language anymore. The language is important. I'll tell you right now, it is important. We wouldn't have Vedic yoga if in every generation there weren't Indians who learned Sanskrit. And Sanskrit's one of the oldest languages on the planet. Okay? Language is important. Where was I going with all this? I can't even remember, for crying out loud. Oh, yeah. So, you saw what the rabbis are saying now, okay? The world's got to be destroyed. Okay, for something new to come in, the old has to be completely destroyed. Well, the oldest thing on the planet are the Jewish tracts. Okay? It's the fucking Bible. That's what's got to go. These bearded fucks in the black hats are what's got to go. And this is their blindness. This is what they can't see. Okay? So why is everything that's happening now so Jewish? Well, again, this is my Tying It All Together podcast, okay? Head to the hills. When you see the level of Jewish influence in the world, you think immediately there's a conspiracy. Okay? But you forget. From thought comes reality. And everybody in the Western world and the Middle Eastern world is thinking at their deepest levels, which is spiritual thinking, which is contemplation. Remember the podcast I did on divine imagination, object imagination? I gave the example of the illiterate people in 725. And anyways, you remember, right? This is object imagination, okay? So the creation of object reality is two-way. So objectivity is not just forced upon us. We contribute to the unfoldment of object reality through human thinking. Okay? And through human consciousness. Okay? This is why the yogis can do the miracles. This is why Christ could do the miracles. This is why the rabbis can do the magic, both white and black, by the way, but like 99% black for the last few hundred years. Really dark black magic, okay? This is why. This is how consciousness works. I can't believe how well this podcast is turning out. I wasn't even going to do a podcast tonight. I wasn't in the mood. So if the last 3,000 years, or since Rome converted itself to a religious and thought empire in the form of the Catholic Church. By the way, the Catholic religion existed before Christ. Rome, as a thinking body, was conceiving of a universal religion before the Christ mythos entered into the canon, okay? So we have been thinking for at least 2,000 years within a very Jewish paradigm, because everything is Jewish. I've tried to tell you guys this, I don't know how many times. I'm a Christian, Bruce, I'm not a Jew. No, you fucking idiot. You're a Jew of the Christian denomination. Why do I say that? Because you're following one person, and if you reference anyone before him, it's just to validate that he was the Messiah, which is, of course, a what term? Is that a Greek term? Is that a Turkish term? Is that a Saudi term? Is that a Chinese term? Messiah? No. What is it? It's a Jewish term, right? So, it's Jewish. Admit that, okay? Stop fucking pretending you're not Jews. Okay, I'm not even at the Muslims yet, so give me a minute. So, there's no such thing as a Christian. There's a Jew who accepts Christ. Because Christ is the 27th major prophet, 26 preceded him. And Christian theology and Christian eschatology uses the previous 26 to validate the legitimacy of Christ, especially Isaiah. Okay? So you're not a Christian, you're a Jew. Okay? And the Jews, we could say now, are Jews who don't accept Christ or Muhammad. Now, when you get to Muhammad, the funny thing about the Mohammedans is they accept the Christ not as the Son of God, but as one of the great prophets of the lineage of prophets, okay? They accept the Christ as one of the great prophets. And I will tell you right now, the Quran venerates the mother of Christ more than the Catholic Church. Okay, the Catholic Church calls her, they've basically deified her. She's a deity in the Catholic canon now, in the Catholic, wait for it, pantheon. And the Catholics have a pantheon, okay? And Mother Mary is a goddess in that pantheon. They don't use the word goddess, but when you understand religions as a universal phenomenon on this planet the way I understand them, they have deified her, and she is a goddess, okay? Now, the Muslims come in and they say Christ, first of all, Muslims don't believe Christ was crucified. They believe, wait for it, you're not even going to believe this. They believe the dude has been physically alive on the planet and is still here now. He's 2,000 years old. You heard it here first, okay? They believe Mary, the mother of Christ, is the most divine woman and the best woman who ever existed in all humanity, including all the women who came after her, okay? And of course, they accept Muhammad, which is the final prophet in the canon, the 28th. Okay? Now, there's more than 28 prophets. There's only 28 major prophets. There's a bunch of minor prophets as well. Okay? So Muslims don't exist either. They're just fucking kidding themselves. They're Jews of the Muslim denomination. Okay? Jews of the Christian denomination and Jews of the Muslim denomination. So we got like 3 billion people. All of their thinking takes place within the imaginative boundary of the Abrahamic canon. You know what a canon is? I'll give you that word too, because these words are important. I know some of you do, but the Talamanca Review is for the uneducated as well as the educated, okay? Canon. Oh, I thought that had 2 N's. I went to the gun one. It's a 1 N, C-A-N-O-N. Number 1, A. It's a noun. Number 1, A regulation or dogma decreed by a church council. B. A provision of canon law. Number 2, Middle English, from Anglo-French, from Latin mode. The most solemn and unvarying part of the Mass, including the consecration of the bread and wine. That's a very Catholic one. Number 3, an authoritative list of books accepted as holy. You get the point, right? All right, so this is the Abrahamic canon, is everything from the Torah to the Quran. Okay, now each Jewish sect, the Jew sect, the Christian Jew sect, and the Mohammedan Jew sect, they will all have sub-books that spin off and sub-schools that spin off. Okay? But all of this thinking, and thinking produces what? Reality. All of this thinking is done within the Abrahamic mindset. Even if you think you're exempt, you're not. Because if you're born in the West of European origin, much of your thinking comes from the epigenetic passing forward of customs and ideas that are entrenched in your culture now, which originate in the Abrahamic canon, the Abrahamic cradle. I'm being a bit goofy tonight, a bit dramatic. So, if everybody's thinking within this context, can you understand why, as the reality unfolds, because human thinking is a co-creator with reality, can you understand why so much of it seems Jewish? So many of the conspiracy theorists who stand back and go, the Jews control the world, they don't realize how consciousness works. Okay? They control the world in the sense that we haven't been able to think of a theology outside of their tentacles. Okay? That's the only way. And the fact that there's been no spiritual renewal in the West for, I don't know, well, the thing about the Abrahamic systems is once you're in them, you're in them. And trying to get out of them is like getting your throat slit. We've sort of escaped it in the West. The Christian sect of Judaism has sort of escaped the autocracy and death cult nature of the Abrahamic scriptures, but it also explains a lot of our weakness now and why we're on the verge of collapse, because you see what I'm saying? So if all these rabbis are saying the old world has to end so the new world can come in, it's almost the same as that fucking idiot Sadhguru saying there's too many people in the world. Well, why haven't you put a bullet in your head yet, you fucking idiot? Yeah, I just called Sadhguru a fucking idiot. Why haven't you put a bullet in your head yet, you fucking idiot? Okay? And if you rabbis think that your God is going to preserve you as this old world is destroyed, you do not understand consciousness correctly either. You're the main sacrifice on the altar. And that's your blind spot, you fucking idiots. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review. Victory.